You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Good morning. This is Hurricane Laura today. Yep, that's about all we can say. Goodbye. No, this is Hurricane Laura, a very intense and developing tropical cyclone. It's stunned a lot of people in the meteorological community and elsewhere and beyond, and if you're not taking this storm seriously by now, then I'm not sure what will, because this is heading not just to Category 3 status, which it has already reached this morning, but even further. It looks like it's going to become a Category 4, probably even before the National Hurricane Center says it will be on their forecast. And the landfall intensity estimate is always increasing right now. With regards to timing, we are approximately 16 hours away from landfall. That's the best estimate we've got from the models at the moment. Daylight breaking over the storm that happened a couple of hours ago. Not sure if this is the most up-to-date imagery. Let's just see if we can get a new one here. But you can see how the eye has been developing and the storm looking extremely good today. I think it's giving a few people flashbacks as well. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team consisting of Ike, Isaac, Rain, Dominic, Ethan, Kay, and Thomas Schwent. Good afternoon, morning to you all. Afternoon here in the UK. There's a few of us over there, and plenty of people joining us from the US, although admittedly no one in the direct path of this storm right now. The closest person I would say is probably Isaac there in Corpus Christi. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on the storm right now?
Definitely a serious situation here. If you haven't decided to evacuate to go to shelter now, you have a little bit more time than was forecast previously. You have till about lunchtime, so about 12 to 2 p.m. today, till tropical storm force winds are estimated to be there at the earliest reasonable time. And by that point, you should have been done with your hurricane preparations or done with either deciding to evacuate or go to a shelter. I would highly recommend those of you guys under mandatory evacuation to heed that and get out of the area immediately, because this is a serious storm we're talking about here. This isn't a Category 1. This is a Category 3, perhaps strengthening to a Category 4 hurricane here soon. So it's definitely a storm to take seriously here. And of course, it's forecast to make landfall during the night here, unfortunately. So I imagine it's going to be a really scary night for a lot of people on the Louisiana and Texas coastline here.
Storm surge warnings extend as far as Freeport now, so that's further than it was yesterday, because there were watches in that area at the time. Hurricane warnings for that whole area around the border between Texas and Louisiana. Let's talk to Thomas. You've not been around here for some time, but we are back on board with you here now. What's going on with Laura?
Laura's been, I think, as we all know, rapidly intensifying throughout this morning and throughout the last night. I know that myself and a couple other people on the stream were talking about the possibility of waking up to a major this morning. I thought it was relatively unlikely. I thought I might wake up to a 110 mile per hour, maybe 115, but right now recon's supporting 120 to 125. So it's really impressive how quickly the storm's been intensifying. It's rapidly deepening at this time, and I think that the expectation of a Category 4 landfall is pretty reasonable at this point. So if you're along that Texas-Louisiana coastline, if you're in a tropical storm or a hurricane warning at this point, I would strongly suggest finishing your precautions as soon as possible, rushing those plans to completion, because you don't have much more time before the storm arrives. It's going to be making landfall around 5 this morning, so it's going to be an early morning landfall.
Yep. As always, we will take comments and questions on our stream in this hour. Let me give you an idea of what our structure is going to be, because a few people have asked us about what our schedule is. So we'll tell you right now. We're doing 1 hour of coverage here, then we're regrouping, and then we will be starting full extensive coverage on the landfall of Laura beginning this afternoon actually, local time. We'll be starting at 3 p.m. Central, all the way through until landfall, which at the moment we're anticipating will be at about 1 a.m. That's my latest indication. You said later just then, didn't you, Thomas?
Yeah, I think it'll be a little later than that. Regardless, it's going to be
At night.
it's going to be a long night. We'll see. Also, now a pressure of 959 has been found in Laura.
There's plenty of recon going on there as well. Yeah, give us an update on that.
Yeah, so as of now, drops on data's come in from the latest drop in the eye. The pressure has now dropped to 959. So from the first drop from NOAA to the second drop in the eye, we've gone from 964 to 959 in the span of, I believe, less than 2 hours, maybe even less than an hour. I'm not exactly sure how much time it was, but it's intensifying extremely quickly. Flight level winds of 140 miles per hour were found, which supports about 120 miles per hour.
That's what we're running with on this update today. National Hurricane Center still have it at 115. They will be doing a full update at the end of this hour, and I'd struggle to see them keeping it at 115.
Recon right now is doing a northwest to southeast pass through the eye.
All right. What are the chances of it becoming a Category 5, asks Random Gamer.
15%.
That is one of the obvious questions that has begun really circulating at this point. Everyone wants to know how likely that is, and yeah, well, it's got to do it now. It's got to keep that rapid intensification going if it's going to reach Category 5 status. It's not going to do it as it makes landfall. Well, we certainly hope not, but it would seem extremely unlikely that it would do it at that point.
Agree with that. I think that a solid 20 to 25% is reasonable at this point of this doing it. I mean, the storm has been intensifying and continuing to do so, and there's not much reason for it to stop. That eye wall is consolidating right now, and not only that, but the storm has about at least 12 more hours of near perfect conditions before shear is going to really start to increase, and even at about the 20 to 25 knots that we're worried about near landfall, if this storm is a 150 plus mile an hour storm by that point, and it's got a well-defined core like this does, and it's as large as it is, I don't see that actually having a terribly bad impact on the storm's intensity, unfortunately.
And when it does make landfall, the National Hurricane Center are now expecting between 10 and 15 feet of storm surge in the landfall zone. What are our thoughts on that?
Well,
apart from shock.
Well, that amount of surge is absolutely unsurvivable. It's not only going to extend it's in just along parts of the coast, because this area of western Louisiana and eastern Texas is really low lying. So this will probably extend 30, 40, maybe even pushing 50, 60 miles inland. So I was looking at a bunch of models, and there was around 10 feet of storm surge as far inland as Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is quite remarkable.
Wow. That is crazy.
So to put some comparison on that with a recent situation, that level of surge would be similar to what Hurricane Michael produced in Mexico Beach, and that damaged or destroyed up to 90% of the buildings in the town.
So certainly not one to take lightly, I think is the least that you can deduce from any of our updates right now. More questions then. What are the chances of an extreme wind warning?
It'd have to get pretty strong to do that.
Yeah, it'd probably have to get like high-end Cat 4 at least.
Well, it isn't an extreme wind warning for a major hurricane eyewall making landfall.
believe so, actually. They had
So
one
that would be
for
13
Irma, I want
plus,
to say, in
so
2017
it's already
when it
met the
moved to landfall in
criteria for
Florida.
that.
A few questions
Some-
about where it is on the CDPS as well. Believe it or not, it's still only, in inverted commas, a CDPS stage 5. That's still quite
It was raised
devastating.
to a 6 last night by Devon.
Well, using official data from what I can see, Kay, it's still a 5, but putting it up to Category 4 would make it a 6, and if it was to make landfall with 155 mile an hour winds, it would be a Stage 7 out of the 10-tiered scale. Either way, it's looking like a very big impact on the way, and to be honest with you, if the CDPS did factor in storm surge as well, it probably would be at least a 6. But we are, in terms of rainfall, it looks like we're expecting maybe 10 to 12 inches near the landfall zone and maybe higher amounts locally.
Yeah, Laura's going to be a big rainmaker. The Weather Prediction Center has a moderate risk out for rainfall over the next 3 days, so wouldn't be surprised to see that upgraded to a high risk later today into tomorrow in some spots.
Something that I want to note as well, despite there being all this storm surge, flash flooding, and stuff risk, there's also the risk for tornadoes. Today we have the Storm Prediction Center has issued a slight risk for a majority of Louisiana. Does not include New Orleans and Shreveport, but does include Alexandria. That would be mainly a tornado-driven risk, as Laura is forecast to make landfall later today and into tonight. Going on into tomorrow, however, there is a slight risk from Alexandria, Louisiana, really extending up towards northeast of Little Rock, and that's once again a tornado-driven risk. And on the day 3 outlook, we could see some potentially isolated tornadoes across the Mississippi River Valley and potentially as far north as the Great Lakes region as the Laura moves through the area.
I'd like to cut in for a second here, Ethan, and say Recon went into the center again, and from what I'm seeing, they recorded a minimum pressure in this pass down to 954.6
Oh my
millibars
goodness.
flight level.
So that's
Oh no,
another
I'm sorry.
4
I'm sorry. No,
millibar drop.
actually, it's a lot lower. Actually,
What?
it actually went down to 952.9 millibars flight level. I mean,
Wow.
That is a rate of intensification. It's something like 5 times the minimum threshold of rapid intensification. It's a very serious situation unfolding right before our eyes.
2 readings
Yeah.
of 952.9 millibars in this newest pass flight level. So really,
Did they drop a drop sign in there?
unsure at this point because there's a little bit of a data gap. So I don't know if they did or not. I'm assuming they did. And that's probably going to come in shortly here.
So we're
To
looking
see
at
what that says at surface.
Looking again at the radar imagery, and you can see the edge of the storm just about entering the scope, and you can see a few nasty looking smaller showers there approaching the coastline as well, but nothing too much, not much on land at least just yet. You saw Ike's picture not long ago. He's showing Galveston right now, and it's a bit wet over there, but nothing much going on right now, right, Ike? Somewhere? Okay. Well, I thought he was there to speak, but I wondered if he had anything to comment on that. Plenty more questions that are coming in, though. How big is Laura in terms of size compared to other hurricanes? I don't know if you want to whip out the comparisons here, but
I can whip out a pretty good comparison to this storm.
Sure you can.
Really, the storm size comparison in the area, really the only storm that I can really compare it to is quite obvious. It's Rita,
is it?
which has really been the yeah.
I suppose you might be right there.
Yeah, because Rita is a good size comparison at this point, and it's also the benchmark for hurricanes in southwestern Louisiana and southeastern Texas, and Laura could replace that list.
If this thing was to make a Category 4 landfall near the border, it would actually be unprecedented, because the closest Category 4 landfall to the expected landfall zone, it was the two Galveston hurricanes in 1900 and 1915. So nothing's really hit that area, the actual bend to the east of there. So if it does become a worst case scenario, then, you know, if you are in that area, definitely get out of there, because you'll be seeing things that you haven't seen before by the looks of things. Could it become a Category 5? Well, we've spoken about this a few times already. Still low chances, but they are creeping up a little bit. Current eye temperature, what is it? And could we confirm that cold cloud tops have wrapped around the eye?
Yes, cold cloud tops have wrapped around the eye, but I do note that on the latest satellite imagery, they have been waning a little bit. Now, normally in a tropical cyclone, this would be weakening, but for Laura, this is a very bad sign, because when cloud tops wane like this, that typically means that the eye is emerging. And
it is.
that's
You look at
certainly
satellite
occurring in
imagery, it is.
It is clearing out pretty quickly.
There we are on the infrared right now, and this imagery can be a little bit more scary than what we're used to, because this kind of imagery that we've been using for just a few years, I don't know, it just makes it look scarier than it actually is. It is still pretty scary, but you could imagine this being a high-end Category 4 when you look at this imagery. But when you look at the other imagery from RAM and such, is actually imagery resembles borderline Category 4. Still very crazy, I suppose, is the only word for it at this point, but there we are right now.
The second recon plane is going in for a southeast to northwest pass just now.
So we'll see what they've got for us.
Recon plane.
In terms of SFMRs, the highest that I've seen so far this morning was a SFMR of 103 knots from, I believe, the NOAA 2 plane earlier today so far. And I could, of course, that's probably going to change throughout the course of this morning into the afternoon here. But so far, the highest I've seen is 103 knots.
Also, some new news that I'm seeing, Air Force 301 has taken a turn after going into the center of Laura and is now going to measure the wind speeds in the northeastern quadrant.
Oh.
So
That's
they have
good.
made a turn from northwest to northeast.
The flight level winds on that most recent pass from NOAA 2, it hits 125 knots flight level now.
Wow. So we're getting into 125 mile an hour territory, surface.
Numbers escalating almost by the minute.
Yeah, quite quickly. So that's definitely very concerning, to say the least.
While we're here, I wanted to, if you guys don't mind, I was going to go over the evacuation orders for Texas.
Very important.
Yep, I have it on my screen right now. I want to go over to it. This was updated as of 9 in the morning this morning today. This is for Texas here. Mandatory evacuations are in effect for the following areas: Boulevard Peninsula, Texas; the city of Galveston, Texas; Hardin County, Texas; Jasper County, Texas; Jefferson County, Texas; Newton County, Texas; Orange County, Texas; and the city of Port Arthur, Texas. And those are for mandatory evacuations. Voluntary evacuations are in effect for the following areas: the city of Baytown, Texas, zip code specific 77520 and 77523 for vulnerable populations in low-lying areas; Brazoria County, Texas; Chambers County, Texas; Harris County, zones A and B; the city of Jamaica Beach, Texas; Liberty County, Texas; the city of Nassau Bay, Texas; Polk County, Texas; the city of Seabrook, Texas; and also the city of Tiki Island, Texas, and that's for voluntary evacuations. And then reception centers are down below. There's 4 of them: one in San Antonio, one in Austin, one in Dallas-Fort Worth, and one in Ellis County. Nathan?
Thank you very much for that. There's also instructions in parts of Louisiana as well. I do forget what those are right now. We had Nelson on hand last night who told us all about it, who lives there, but if anyone finds that information, please do bring it to us as well. But looking now still at the radar imagery, first rainfall from the storm looks like it's just about reaching the coastline there in both Louisiana and Texas. Galveston looks like it's getting a shower, so you saw that webcam earlier. It was pretty wet, whether it's actually raining, but anything that you do see along the coastline now is to do with the storm, and actually, yeah, a little bit of a breeze going on there in Galveston right now. Ike?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Anything else you can tell us about the image? I suppose
Pretty
not.
windy and very moist, I would say.
Certainly looks like it, and no real signs of surge inundation yet, as far as I can see.
I do note though in that picture the sea is a lot higher than it usually is.
Okay.
Usually it's about where you probably can't see it because of that raindrop in front of the camera there, but there's a little looks like there's a little pier there. It's usually right about around there, but it looks to me at least the water seems to be about 1 or 2 feet above normal right now so far.
So there we are. We'll see if we can get more updates there later on. Let's go back to the latest satellite imagery. There is the infrared once again. You can see its progression throughout today. That might be slightly less up to date as the visible that we've got here. So it looks... Oh, there's Bavi as well. That is Typhoon Bavi, which we should also talk about because that's right next to the western coast of South Korea. That's still a Category 2 there, moving north up towards North Korea, where it looks like it will make landfall as a typhoon around the same time as Laura makes landfall, actually. So we do have a double threat around the world. That's also what we're looking at this moment. There is a live stream on the Force 13 main channel covering just Bavi's satellite imagery if you want to take a look at that as well, whilst we are on and off the air with our commentary. But Laura there, the main feature once again, and I think we had... No, we don't have the rapid scan infrared just yet, but we'll get that for you very shortly.
I got rapid scan sandwich imagery on my screen if you're interested in that.
Yeah, we could do that. So there it is again. That's visible plus infrared there.
And you can see how, especially in those later frames there, the eye's gotten more and more clear with time here, which is of course really concerning to see. And of course you can see some of the rain bands starting to make their way into Texas and Louisiana. In fact, actually, most of the outer bands look to be over Louisiana, coastal Louisiana, right about now. But that's probably going to change in a few hours here as the storm progresses on towards the Louisiana-Texas coastline.
Don't forget, towards the end of this hour of our broadcast, the National Hurricane Center will be updating on Laura, and also Tropical Depression 13. If you haven't seen that one yet, well, let me show you. Depression 13E in the Eastern Pacific, so don't worry, in the Atlantic, we're not getting another one just yet. There it is on the right-hand side of the image there off the coast of Mexico. That could affect Baja California, Sur, as a weak tropical storm or a depression, but certainly compared to the last storm, whose name already escapes me, Genevieve, then it shouldn't be too much of an impact, but it could be a rainmaker.
But there's also that system just west-southwest of 13E. That will probably become a tropical cyclone this hour.
Really?
Mm-hmm. National Hurricane Center at the 8 a.m. Eastern Time Tropical Weather Outlook gave it 90%, and they said if these development trends continue with continued organization, advisories will be initiated later this morning, and that seems to be happening.
All right, well, we'll let you know on that one. There are two systems there. Yep, they both look decent. So this is the tropics in late August, very active, but it has to be said that we don't often see something like this towards the end of August. We do, but it's You know, never a guarantee, and it's always bad news, but here it is right now. This is our big event. Laura, which is approaching land and is likely to make landfall at about 1 a.m. Central Time tonight, we think, but several acknowledgements that it could be put back a little bit depending just on what the storm does in the interim period. And we are open to questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and we've received one. What do you think about that wave off Africa? Well, let's just go on back over to that one as well. The main development region, Atlantic wide view. And you can see that wave that's just emerging off Africa. Any thoughts from the team on that?
I believe some of the models
I know that some models were picking
ahead.
up on the end of it.
Yes, it sounded like you were both about to say the same thing there.
Yeah, I believe the Euro, about a day or two ago, was wanting it to form near the Bahamas and threaten the East Coast later on, far out in time. But we'll see what comes out of that. That potentially could become our next thing to watch here, potentially.
Yeah, there's some possibility that it does become a tropical cyclone, regardless of whether this wave does or not. I think the team can agree with me when I say that September is expected to be a fairly active month when it comes to the tropics in the Atlantic. If this wave doesn't develop, there are plenty that are expected to come behind it and develop. And I know that we were looking at some ensembles. I know, Nathan, you were looking at some ensemble models, and things are looking pretty active. So
our best indications are that September is going to be pretty bad. That another major hurricane landfall somewhere in the Western Atlantic or Western Caribbean, or both, is far more likely than not, and maybe multiple.
We have the recon information from NOAA 2. They haven't gotten into the eye just yet, but they're in the eye wall right now. Pressure down to 979.8 on the latest reading. Probably lower than that, because they're in the eye wall.
Could Laura's track shift west, a bit more west towards Galveston, is a question that we've received.
So this was a concern a couple of days ago, that Laura could have a westward shift. At this point, it looks like that's pretty unlikely. Galveston, regardless, could still get severe impacts, even though it's not. The odds of Galveston getting a direct hit are very low at this point. Impacts are still expected to be severe from Laura, and especially if it takes the western side of the track, it could still be quite gnarly, although there is some reason to believe that the eastern side of the track would be favored by model consensus, just because Laura has been consistently moving more north than west relative to what models have thought in the past few runs. So looks like the eastern side actually may be more likely than the western side. We'll just have to see. But Galveston, if you're in Galveston, you shouldn't be letting your guard down, but I still think it's unlikely that a direct hit will occur.
Gotta say, this is a very odd question, but if Laura makes a run for Category 5 like some people think, would it be a Lorenzo storm? I don't really know what you mean by that. Lorenzo was across the other end of the ocean.
What was their question?
Comparing it to Lorenzo, basically. I don't know the logic in that one.
Maybe they mean if the eye doesn't fully open or something, I'm assuming.
Or maybe a borderline case.
Yeah.
Quite possible. Will Shear possibly limit the intensity of Laura during the time of landfall? It's looking likely. We've been saying that for days. We're holding out hope for it, at least.
Recon data is sparse, but it's coming in. We could have a Category 4 hurricane.
That would not be a surprise.
So what data are we finding that suggests that?
So far, there's been some recon information come in that flight level winds are potentially near 145 knots.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a significant increase since last time. We'll see.
Potentially, he says.
Potentially. Okay.
Be interesting to
How
see
can
what
you not know
Landfall
fully?
Yeah. What?
I'm not sure how to read it.
They only got the raw data.
Okay.
Send me the raw data, and I'll figure it out.
More questions then. What is the current eye temperature? I don't currently have access to, or the ability to check that just now. But I imagine that, well, satellite-derived eye temperature, which is the best we have absent recon, unless they get a temperature fix in the eye. They'll probably get like 30 degrees or whatever, but satellite indications, just getting this on my screen. It is getting warmer, and I would suggest that the eye temperature is probably in the -20s right now. It does look like a Category 4 on satellite. And the microwave appearance is something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
Could someone
Yeah,
get
but
that up
that's
actually,
like
because people are often interested in seeing the microwave.
I did post it earlier in the comms.
So you did.
So we do have a, I can confirm we do have a 140 flight level. Notice that.
Yeah, this here was a microwave image from earlier. Kay, do you want to describe that at all?
I can do.
To a layperson like me.
Well, what it indicates is that Laura's structure is still consolidating as of 3 hours ago now. It's still consolidating, but it indicates a very strong eye wall, a relatively large eye given how rapidly it's intensifying, and no sign of an eye wall replacement cycle, which means it looks stable and set to continue intensifying.
Certainly looks that way. Let's see. Does this does this remind you of Katrina? And can you show water vapor? It was a matter of time until that was that came up.
I saw it before and decided not to mention it because I didn't think you wanted to talk about that.
Speaking of water
It's
vapor, I
not
got that
that
up as well.
Not that
There's-
fitting to compare it to Katrina.
The
But-
only thing that's like, yeah, you go.
Even if it was Katrina's intensity and Katrina's appearance and Katrina's structure, it would not be Katrina's damage in this area. Let's just get that one straight.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I have nothing to fight that.
What do we think the chances are that Houston and Galveston take a direct hit? Unlikely at this stage.
Very unlikely at this stage, but it'll probably get some tropical storm force winds, maybe even hurricane force winds, but I would not say a direct landfall.
Oh, let me try and find... No, lost it. The percentage chances of hurricane conditions were pretty low in those areas. It's close for comfort, but they should get away without hurricane conditions. Unless it does do a shift, but only time will tell on that one. Surge will be a bigger issue, though, in Galveston, I should think.
Yeah, that's a very huge issue.
Keep sending your questions in. We're here till the end of the hour, and then we will have more live coverage later today. To remind you of what the schedule's looking like, we will be live again continuously from 3 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, and that will run all the way up until landfall, which at the moment we're expecting will occur at about 1 o'clock in the morning tonight. So we will be there for a long time later today to give you all of the latest on the storm. This is an hour briefing, you could call it, ahead of that big live stream tonight, and we'll have all bases covered on Laura. National Hurricane Center will update shortly, so we'll get news on that as soon as it comes in. Possibly another tropical cyclone forming in the eastern Pacific, and information on Tropical Depression 13E as well, and of course Hurricane Laura's big update from the National Hurricane Center, including what they now forecast. So that's expected sometime before the top of the hour.
We have the update on Typhoon Bobby. The the actual advisory is out from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Initial wind speed is down to 95 knots, 110 miles per hour. It's forecast to make landfall just over 12 hours from now, probably with winds around 80 miles per hour in extreme western North Korea.
Yep, you can definitely see that. That's the main panel in the middle there. That's Typhoon Bavi. On the left-hand side of geocolor and infrared, enhanced infrared views of Laura, and on the bottom right-hand side, you can just about see the Atlantic Ocean underneath our live shot from Galveston, which was just bird-bombed then for a moment. I believe we're now joined by Devon. Good morning to you.
Yep, good morning.
Now, you've been here for a lot of legendary storms in our 5 years at Force 13. What's your take on what we've seen in the overnight hours on Laura?
Well, it didn't intensify as quickly as I thought it would in the overnight hours, which is a good thing. The bad news is that it's intensifying faster than I would expect it right now. I mean, what are we looking at right now? 6 millibars an hour? Like something in the range of 5 to 6 millibars an hour? It's absolutely ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous for an intensification rate.
Yeah.
I believe we have recon data from Isaac.
The new recon pass for NOAA 2 just came in, and they found a minimum pressure flight level down to 957.6 millibars.
Oh.
And they found 98 knot SFMRs in the northwest eye wall.
And the suspect reading of 100 knots on the southeast quadrant.
I thought the last pass got 954 millibars.
That was for the Air Force plane. This is for NOAA.
They're flying at different
how would
heights.
how would they find a pressure that's 3 millibars higher? Did they miss the eye?
It's extrapolated, and they're at different heights in the storm.
Recon has just got wind of 130 miles per hour just above the surface.
Oh my goodness.
Which plane?
If those mix down, then we have a category 4. If those mix down.
Wow.
So this is probably knocking on the doorstep of category 4 right now.
Yeah, this. I mean, it was knocking on the doors of a category 4 an hour ago, and it dropped another 5 millibars. So, yeah, Cat 4. That's utterly insane. Wow. And it's like it completely skipped category 3 this morning.
Yeah. It does feel like that. Is there any extremely times 3? They said extremely high threat of flash flooding in the mid-Atlantic region this weekend or not? Devon, you might know a little bit about what's going on up that way in Pennsylvania as well, where you could get 4 inches.
I don't see any significant flash flooding attempt. Obviously, whenever you get a tropical storm coming through, always keep an eye out for flash flooding. You can expect 3 to 6 inches of rain. That's more than enough. But definitely not the same type of flash flooding that you would have experienced underneath SIES, if that's what you're wondering.
For flash flooding right now, there's a moderate risk of flash flooding today for southeastern Texas and southwestern Louisiana in association to Laura. Tomorrow, there's a moderate risk again extending from the Texas-Louisiana border region northeastward towards a large part of Arkansas. I imagine this will be upgraded to a high risk at some point. Elsewhere on the Day 2 outlook, there's also a slight risk across West Virginia and a moderate risk across Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now, that system is going to interact or merge with Laura when Laura gets near the Ohio Valley, and that's going to lead to a even higher rainfall threat, potentially. And there's a Day 3 moderate flash flood risk again for Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, extreme southern Illinois, western Kentucky, and northwestern Tennessee. I imagine these two systems will combine at some point and could lead to some prolonged effects across the Great Lakes region and potentially the mountain region as well.
The convection has looks like it's leveled off a little bit around the edge of the eye. It's still blowing up either side. You can see it swirling around those convective blowups. So it does still look very good. And
Nathan?
that wouldn't surprise me. It's Category 4 now. Yes, go ahead.
The latest drops on from NOAA 2 have come in since Air Force 301 has stopped broadcasting since 10 past the hour. And it gives a pressure of 958 on that latest pass.
Update out on Tropical Depression 13E. They're still going with 35 miles an hour. They're expecting a brief tropical storm peak, so I don't think there's much to worry about regarding Tropical Depression 13, but that update is now out from the National Hurricane Center.
Ground observations for Louisiana show there's some significant flooding in Grand Isle, Madison Canal. So the surge is already being felt there from Laura. And it just goes to show that if you need to evacuate, if you need to prepare, do it now, because
should be done.
The impact will come much earlier than you think.
Nathan?
Yes?
I just have a question about 13E.
Yes?
I think we have a mistake from the National Hurricane Center.
Really?
They've numbered it advisory number 3.
And it should be advisory number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. No. It is 3. Number one was at 3 Zulu this morning. But
then I'm seeing the first at 9Z.
I'm confused by that. Oh no!
I'm sure they'll fix it.
No, you might be right. Actually, number 1 was at 3 a.m. Mountain Time, and now it's 9 a.m. Anyway, enough of that technicality. Everyone makes a mistake every so often, if they have indeed. We're still waiting for the update to come out on Laura. I imagine they'll wait a little bit because planes are in the storm right now, so they're going to try and get as much information as they can before the update is scheduled out.
Yeah, they're going to take their sweet time getting that advisory out.
The issue is the data for the Northeast Island pass is still low.
Crazy.
Devin, what was that?
I said that they're going to be taking their sweet time with this storm getting the advisory out, especially considering how quickly it's intensifying.
Definitely.
Something else.
Breaking news, storm surge forecast may be rising, and we could see the potential for the storm surge at the next advisory to be upgraded to 17 to 20 feet.
That's not surprising to anybody listening to this, I would imagine.
I probably want to get out.
Threatening.
It makes it a lot more real, though, Devin. Well, that wouldn't be good to see. We'll let you know if that does come to fruition as soon as the update comes out, and we'll be here to bring it to you live. Let's see if we can take some more questions in the meantime then. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Not sure how many we'll get through now, but we've got a lot of the same questions actually. Will 94W be something to watch out for in Okinawa? Now that is another typhoon that could form in the next few days. As a matter of fact, it wants that to be a Category 3 in 5 days' time, or even less than that now. So maybe even 3 days' time, I think it had actually, on the GFS at least. So that could be another significant typhoon. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, for sure. That does look problematic. Also, Devin was mentioning it earlier, but NOAA 2 did barely miss the center of the eye of Laura. So.
Barely miss the center of the eye isn't the same as missing the center of the eye. Like, what were the winds? Were they 5 knots, 15 knots, 25 knots?
11.
What was the
was 11 knots. 959 with 11 knots, which goes to 958.
7 knots?
11.
11.
Is Devon still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to hear whether if he said 7 or 11
It
knots.
was 11.
11, 1-1.
1-1. All right. So yeah, that's definitely a bit of a miss. So it's definitely lower than 958.
Oh, it was
and then you have
959 with that, so I lowered it to 58.
And then you have the drop zone of 958. And what was the winds on the drop zone?
No, that was the drop zone, Devon.
The drop zone was 959
Yes, with 11
with
knots.
11 knot winds.
Yes.
Is anyone confused around here?
Extremely, because
Yes,
the other plane found 954 millibars.
The drop hasn't come in for that.
Ah.
It stopped reporting just after entering the eye. That was half an hour ago now.
Anyway, James
Breaking
Dean sends a
news.
message. Go ahead.
We have Tropical Depression 14E.
Tropical Depression 14.
40 miles per hour peak.
I need to respond to James Dean though because he's supporting us. Thanks very much, and any support that we do receive on our streams helps us to create even better coverage next time around, and it gets better and better every year. So we are eternally grateful for all of that. Wants to know about Alvin, Texas, which is not far from Galveston. I should imagine there'll be some significant rainfall. I'm not sure how prone your area is to surge, but it is quite close for comfort to the coast. So there's certainly that possibility of flooding and surge. And wind speeds, you're probably looking at mid to high range tropical storm force winds.
Sounds about fair. So pretty much what I got in hand, I expect to happen around that part of Texas there, from the looks of it. If the storm does not try to wobble at the last minute here to the west.
And general comments saying things like definitely time for it to reach Category 5 status. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
I do it.
With how fast
It
it's
could occur.
intensifying, absolutely.
At the moment, it's still unlikely, but it definitely has. If it continues at this pace, it could very well reach a significant intensity, higher, maybe higher in Category 4. If it continues at this pace,
That's probably what I would predict by this point. Mid to high end Category 4.
Yeah.
It's definitely looking it's looking like a worst case scenario with intensity right now. This was not, at least I was not expecting it to be intensifying this quickly. I don't think anyone here was. So.
Now, Nathan, I'm not sure if it's possible, but could you perhaps bring up my latest forecast cone that I made?
Oh, where is it?
To begin the live comms, and I'll post it again.
Yeah, please do, so we can
I
get
got
that.
it.
It's very
I got
fast
it on
traffic. Oh, Isaac's got it. Just a moment, we're trying to
Yeah,
sort out all of
it's
our
up,
comms
it's up.
here. Yes, so this is the cone that Ethan has produced for our social media. Tell us about it.
Well, at the time this was made, this is 2 hours old, but I ran with 120 miles per hour. That's easily been verified now.
Yeah.
And I was forecasting 140 miles per hour in around 9 hours from now or so, and a peak of 145 miles per hour at landfall, and then gradual weakening. Rapid weakening, I should say, as it moves inland.
It's definitely possible that the strengthening will slow down gradually. Usually you get storms that strengthen then just stop and weaken, but I think this one might do what you're forecasting.
Absolutely, the storm could go weaker or stronger of that.
Although you're actually saying landfall at peak intensity there.
Yeah, I don't really see Laura weakening as it comes ashore. I don't really see.
You've got shear increasing in the last 6 hours, so that'll hopefully knock it down a little bit.
Well, I knocked down
Hopefully.
10 miles per hour or so. Won't be significant though.
And you can see some bands associated with the storm there, forming a little line just off the coast of western Louisiana and easternmost Texas there. Some of that will be reaching land areas in about an hour or so. So look out there along the coast. Some significant colours moving through. The rain that was over the Galveston area, that looks to have dissipated at this point, and for the moment not much rain occurring on land, but what we've already witnessed and heard about is that surge is already encroaching, already up at least a couple of feet in some areas from what we've heard.
And that's a clear signification if you're in those following areas to get out of there immediately. Like, if it's flooding right now and the storm hasn't even made it up there, then that's a really bad sign of things to come. So if you're there in one of those areas that are already flooded, not even before the actual storm is hitting, I would highly recommend to get out of there before it gets worse.
And it's going to get worse pretty quickly because this storm's moving at a real decent clip. Is it still moving at like 20 miles an hour?
Northwest at 15 is the latest
15
update.
now. It's
15 now. That's still pretty fast. So it's going to be coming in a hurry.
Someone asked earlier, what's the threshold for, quote, explosive intensification versus rapid intensification? Well, explosive intensification is really just a phrase. It's not a technical term.
I've got to interrupt you. The update is out. They're going with 125 miles an hour, and they're calling for a peak of 145 miles per hour prior to landfall, with gusts of 175 when it moves in. Before it moves in, actually, is it? Nope, trying to make sense of this. Just before landfall. And then after it makes landfall, it will stay a hurricane for maybe another 6 hours. They're going with a pressure of 956 on this.
Wow.
That makes sense. The 954.4 plus 1.6 gets you 956. So that makes perfect sense.
No changes in the warnings, in case you were wondering there, but that's what they're running with right now. And to address the storm surge, they are going from Johnson Bayou to Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge, including Calcasieu Lake, 15 to 20 feet expected.
Oh my!
This further increases the potential for people to get out of there. Now that they're seeing that the storm is intensifying, I hope people are taking the storm seriously here and gonna evacuate. Like I said earlier in the stream, I don't know if they've changed it in a new update. We gotta wait for the graphics to come on in. But as of the last update, they're saying the earliest reasonable possible time for tropical storm force winds to start to be felt on the coastline is from about 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. on the coastline as of the last update. So they may have changed it this update, and we'll see about that. But you have still a few hours here to either decide if you want to evacuate here or go to a shelter. And if you're under one of these mandatory evacuations, I would highly recommend you get out of here, out of those areas, because especially seeing that there's flooding already occurring and the storm hasn't even made it on there yet, over land yet. And quickly, again, one last time before we get off the stream here, I want to go over the evacuations over in Texas.
Of course.
This is as of 9 in the morning today, and the current mandatory evacuations in effect for Texas are in from Boulevard Peninsula, the city of Galveston, Texas, Hardin County, Texas, Jasper County, Texas, Jefferson County, Texas, Newton County, Texas, Orange County, Texas, and the city of Port Arthur, Texas. Those are mandatory evacuations in effect for those areas as of the newest update. Voluntary evacuations are in effect for the following areas: the city of Baytown, Texas, zip code specific 77520 and 77523 for vulnerable populations in low-lying areas. Missouri County, Texas, Chambers County, Texas, Harris County, zones A and B, the city of Jamaica Beach, Texas, Liberty County, Texas, the city of Nassau Bay, Texas, Polk County, Texas, the city of Seabrook, Texas, and the city of Tiki Island, Texas, and those are voluntary evacuations. Nathan?
Yep, that sounds pretty bad. The National Hurricane Center's discussion, which I'll read excerpts of here, says that Laura has become a very powerful hurricane this morning. The satellite presentation has continued to improve, with the eye becoming better defined and the cloud tops colder than -70 degrees in the surrounding ring of deep convection. Both NOAA and Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft have provided valuable data this morning. The NOAA P-3 aircraft reported a peak flight level wind of 125 knots at 8,000 feet and a peak SFMR wind of 104 knots. Yes, Devon?
I saw 122 knots. I didn't see the 125.
Yep, whilst the Air Force crew has observed peak 700 millibar flight level winds of 121 knots and peak SFMR winds of 104, the latest minimum pressure estimate from aircraft data is 956 millibars, indicating a pressure drop of 27 millibars over the past 12 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
Strengthening likely to continue today as it moves over the warm waters of the northwestern Gulf and wind shear remains low. Laura's intensity could level off by this evening due to the possibility of an eye wall replacement cycle and the expected increase in shear around the time of landfall. Even if the rate of strengthening eases, Laura is expected to be an extremely powerful Category 4 hurricane when it reaches the northwestern Gulf Coast. And that's about it, really, on that.
In the key messages, Nathan.
So what's the predicted landfall intensity right now?
Category 4, they say. They haven't specified.
145.
Key messages, yes. This is remarkable language from the National Hurricane Center. Unsurvivable storm surge with large and destructive waves will cause catastrophic damage from Sea Rim State Park, Texas to Intracoastal City, Louisiana. This surge could penetrate up to 30 miles inland from the immediate coastline. Only a few hours remain to protect life and property, and all actions should be rushed to completion. Is that what you picked up on, Kay?
Yes.
Yep.
I can't remember the last time they said something like that.
Unsurvivable storm surge, they say. That's from the National Hurricane Center.
Well, they're not wrong on that.
They're not wrong. 15 to 20 feet.
That's a wall of water 2 stories high coming in. So yeah.
Even just 3 feet can get your car soaked up. So 20 feet is very,
20.
very bad.
Yeah, this is
I know,
20.
Big difference, yes, and it's still very bad.
In low-lying areas, many of these areas will be inundated by a 20-foot wall of water potentially. And the fact that the NHC, an official body, are using this language just shows to you how
I don't think I've seen that before.
Me neither.
How urgent and severe this situation is. So get out if you're ordered to, and prepare if you're in the cone or anywhere outside the cone nearby, because the impacts will be felt far beyond the cone of uncertainty.
This is old graphics. We're waiting for the new ones to come out. We don't have them just yet, so...
I got the new cone if you want to take a look.
Oh, you
at
have?
that.
Let's go get that right now with Isaac.
This is the 3-day cone.
Latest National Hurricane Center cone there visible, and you can see what they're going for. Pretty much what we've been looking at the whole time. Major hurricane landfall there. So that first endpoint is the 145 mile per hour point. So the rest is up to interpretation what happens in that little period after that until the landfall, and then moving inland. And also note here that tropical storm force winds are just offshore now as well.
Oh yeah, actually, are some locations in southeastern Louisiana already getting some?
Possibly.
I cannot tell. Actually,
And the earliest
some
reasonable
parts of...
time for tropical storm force winds graphic also updated. Now it's a little bit later now, so I'm guessing now it's probably about 3-4 p.m. right about when coastal parts of Texas and Louisiana are going to start to see tropical storm force winds start to be felt along the coastlines. You have a little bit more time, thankfully, to be able to prepare and rush to completion if you decided just now to prepare or evacuate, given how the storm keeps on intensifying here. Looks like you have till about 2-3 p.m. to do so before tropical storm force conditions start to be felt and it starts to get too dangerous to be out and about doing anything.
Well, that wraps up this hour of coverage. Thanks so much to the team for joining us. We will be back later today at 3 p.m. Central Time with full coverage on Laura's landfall and the approach up to its landfall. So make sure you don't miss that. Yes, go ahead.
with the latest advisory, Laura would be upgraded to Stage 7 CDPS.
Stage 7 on the CDPS. Just explain briefly what that means.
Oh, that's a very significant storm. Like, we're pretty much in Hurricane Rita territory now when we're talking
boy.
about CDPS. So,
No.
Well,
yeah, not looking
Rita was
good
a
right
cat-
now.
well, thank you
Yeah,
for
Rita was a
that.
Category 3, so.
So the news, if you missed it there, just to summarise, that Laura is still a Category 3 with winds of 125 miles per hour, a pressure of 956 and strengthening. We're back on the air right here on Force 13 at 3 p.m. Central Time, right up until Laura's landfall, however long that takes. In the meantime, we are running other live streams covering Laura and Bavi on the Force 13 main channel, and live imagery of Laura on the Force 13 US channel. Search Force 13 US for that. And on our social media platforms as well. In the meantime, you can of course discuss the tropical scene as well on our Discord server, a growing community there as well. discord.gg/Force13. But for now, we'll see you again soon. Stay safe out there, and the storm is closing in. If you're not out by now, then things are going to get pretty tough very soon. This is a very dangerous situation and getting worse by the hour for those areas in the hurricane warning. Until 3 o'clock, we'll see you again soon.